Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and I just watched the E3 press conference, and there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk with you guys about, but there is one thing that stood above and beyond anything else that was at that conference, and that was naturally Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. At least it definitely stood up above and beyond anything for me, and I'm sure that most likely it stood up above and beyond anything for a lot of you guys in my channel, because you guys enjoy the Souls franchise, or at least I would expect so. And now some of you guys might be wondering, what is Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, and what does it have to do with Souls? Well, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is going to be the next game that From Software is working on. This is the game that was teased at the Game Awards last year, where the only thing they actually said was Shadows Die Twice. People were speculating, could be Tenchu, could be Bloodborne 2, could be all of these things. I said, I don't think it's going to be Bloodborne 2. I hope it's a new IP, and I'm super happy with the fact that it is a new IP, because that's what I want to see From Software do. I don't want to see them like get stuck onto one thing and then have to be forced to do it again and again and again. I don't want to see Dark Souls 4. I don't want to see Bloodborne 2. I want to see the next thing. That's what I've always said. And Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is the next thing. Even though I have to say, it feels extremely familiar. To the point when I was watching the gameplay, before they even announced that it was the next From Software game, they had the trailer going on, the Microsoft press conference. I was just like, this is the next From Software game, because I recognized the engine. The engine looks extremely similar to Bloodborne. I would almost bet that it is the Bloodborne engine, but it might be some modified version, might be some evolved version. What I can tell you is that it looked extremely familiar. Like the friggin' flower field that we see at the very start looks just like the flower field where you fight Gurman in Bloodborne. So anyway, that's kind of like what you can expect from a visual standpoint. Now, before we go any further, I do want to bring up something that I didn't notice the first time that I looked at the trailer. I only noticed the second time, because the first time I looked at the trailer, I was so excited. It's the next From Software game, you know, I was hyped up. So I didn't even notice. This kind of just flashed by me. Second time I looked at the trailer, I saw From Software, and then immediately after, Activision. So this game is going to be published by Activision, which has me a little bit concerned. We have seen From Software do some pre-order DLC in Dark Souls 2, and probably some pre-order DLC in some of the other games. Although I'll be honest, I haven't paid that much attention to that stuff. But Dark Souls 2, I think, was the biggest thing that they've done, where they had all of those weapons that you would get earlier in the game. But they were really not that important, if I'm going to be completely honest, and they did not even significantly impact the gameplay. So I believe that From Software is able to distance themselves from that, you know, from that mess of like giving players in-game advantages and stuff like that, because it would just break the game if they were to give players in-game advantages for pre-orders or something like that. So I don't think that's going to be a problem, but it is being published by Activision, so let's hope nothing bad happens with the game. Anyway, I don't want to dabble too much more on the whole Activision thing. Let's actually get to some more of the stuff from the trailer. So first thing that I got to say, visuals looked pretty good. Although, like I said, they look very familiar to Bloodborne, so it's not a big evolution from Bloodborne. If you enjoyed the visuals in Bloodborne, most likely you're going to enjoy the visuals on this game as well. The performance, on the other hand, like some of the sections in that trailer were most definitely running at 60 FPS. Like this game, in terms of performance, was running much better than Bloodborne, because Bloodborne is still pretty much locked at 30, if I remember correctly. And now this could be due to two things, like maybe this is the Xbox One X version of the game, although I'm not sure how that would make sense, because the Bloodborne engine was developed in collaboration with Sony Japan, therefore it should perform better on PS4, but I don't know, maybe just the sheer hardware of Xbox One X, but all I can tell you is that parts of that trailer definitely were running much more than 30 FPS, much smoother, and it looked really, really good. So from what we've seen in the trailers so far, it is clear that it is going to take place in feudal Japan. Now, I was looking in the From Software website, couldn't find anything there. Then I went to the Activision website, couldn't find anything there. The only place where I saw like a description for this game was on the Microsoft website, and this was their description. A fantastical, dark, and twisted new gameplay experience developed by the renowned team at From Software and published by Activision, directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is a third-person action-adventure game with RPG elements. It's pretty much a no-brainer that that's what it was going to be. Now, this is the important part of the announcements, which is why I kind of did this separation. The single-player game puts gamers in the protagonist role of a hard-hearted warrior whose mission is to rescue his master, a young lord, and exact revenge on his arch-nemesis.
Some time has passed since I found you. Your master still lives. They'll soon make use of his bloodline.
Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is scheduled for release in early 2019 for the family of Xbox. Suggested retail price of $60. So it's a full game. It's a single player game, which we kind of expected. I mean, I expected to have some kind of multiplayer the same way that we've had in Souls and Bloodborne. But I also think it would be interesting if they were like, no, this time we're doing something different. This time it's going to be just single player. Right now, the description says single player game. Again, I expect there to be the usual type of multiplayer that we have in Souls. I could be wrong. Now let's talk about the stuff that you actually see in the trailer itself. Very, very early in the trailer, you see the main character losing his arm. That's where the whole, the previous teaser trailer kind of comes in, which is the thing that you were seeing in that teaser trailer was the replacement for his arm, the prosthetic that is made for his arm, which is made by an old man who has an extremely furry leg, almost like he's some kind of like half beast dude. But since this takes place in feudal Japan, could this be like just a loose connection to Bloodborne? Like, I don't think that would be something that Miyazaki would do, but maybe just like a loose, like, oh, look, this guy's maybe came from Yharnam, ended up in feudal Japan, and now he's here fixing you up for this new adventure. I don't know. It's kind of weird that dude would be slightly mutated, but it will probably make sense in the story and the lore of the game. That the fact that his leg was somehow mutated and furry and stuff might be something that we discover in time what that is about. But anyway, that old man fixes you up with a whole new prosthetic arm, and that kind of becomes your whole left arm, and that becomes a bit of a multi-purpose trick weapon. Now, before I go into the details of the multi-purpose trick weapon, there's also some kind of a lady that we see very early on in the trailer. She seems to be in the same room as you and the old man at some point, and then she's seen later interacting with your character, so she is probably going to be some kind of important character as well. Maybe she's even the person who levels you up, could be, because usually whenever there's a character to level you up in Souls, it's usually a female. So maybe the female character is going to be the woman who levels you up, and then the old man is going to be kind of like not really the blacksmith per se, but the dude who like manages your trick weapon, and maybe he'll be able to upgrade it to do different things, because we actually see the trick weapon do a bunch of different stuff in this particular trailer. So one of the first things is you can see it breaking the guard of an enemy. An enemy's got like this wooden shield, and you see a very slow motion part where his hand just like goes back, summons this axe, and then he just smashes the axe onto the shield, which effectively breaks the shield down. And this actually makes sense because for those of you that didn't know, back in the olden days, in medieval times, one of the main purpose of axes was to be able to break down wooden shields, because swords are not as effective at breaking shields, whereas you bring an axe. And back in the day, a lot of the shields were made out of wood, so you would use axes to break through shields. That was one of its things. So the fact that you can break guard with an axe not only makes sense, but it is also one of the first things that you see the trick weapon do. Then you also see the trick weapon being used as a grappling hook. Now, this is not just a navigational tool. You see your character actually grappling hook up on top of an archway or something. I don't know. I'm not watching the trailer at this exact second, but he grapples up on top of something. You see that thing happening. But the interesting thing is that unlocks interesting gameplay styles, because further down in the trailer, you're also going to see aerial assassination. So is that going to be a thing that you're going to be able to use to hide yourself from enemies, bringing in a bit of a stealth element to the game, which earlier on in the trailer, you also see your character kind of like leaning against the wall to remain out of sight. Now, is that a cutscene or is that an actual in-game mechanic? What I can tell you is that it opens up some interesting possibilities for, this type of gameplay, because from Souls, due to the fact that we a lot of times already know where the enemies are coming from because we've played the game so many times. That gives us a distinct advantage, but you're not always able to capitalize on it from a stealth perspective. Whereas if you're doing a couple of runs of this game, and you enjoy it enough to replay it again, you're going to know where the enemies are. Therefore, you'll be able to do interesting things with stealth. Because like I said, we've seen aerial assassination, so you can grapple on to the top of rooftops and whatnot, and then from the rooftops jump down, kill an enemy, go out of sight, and then maybe go behind a wall somewhere, stealth your way through a portion of the level. There's interesting possibilities for gameplay there. Now, this grappling hook is not just a navigational tool. It can also be used offensively, like we see in the trailer in one of the boss fights where he's fighting against this horseback dude. At one point, he throws the grappling hook in order to stick it onto the enemy and then propel himself towards the enemy, which is a very, very interesting mechanic because it brings a lot more, how should I put it? It brings a lot more agile play style to what we know from like the meaty combat of the Soulsborne genre. This is a much more agile character that is able to just like jump around with his grappling hook and whatnot, which is very interesting. Also, something that we don't see at all is a proper shield, so to speak, but we do see an umbrella shield being formed by your trick weapon. Now, I'm curious as to how this works. Like, do you need to equip a certain trick weapon? Like, do you need to go to the old man and be like, okay, dude, I want to have the grappling hook now? Or do you go there and you're like, okay, dude, I want to have the umbrella? Or do you get like different arms that you carry with you and then you can just kind of like detach them and attach, okay, I want the grappling hook arm, or I want the umbrella arm, or is it only one arm and you have to like modify it so that you can decide, okay, for this level, I need the grappling hook. For this level, I need the umbrella shield. To be honest, I hope that it is something that you can swap on the fly, because otherwise I know that most of the time I'm just going to be walking around with the friggin' grappling hook, because grappling hooks make everything better. Grappling hooks literally make everything better. Like, I'm sorry. There's no getting around that. Grappling hooks are awesome. But anyway, so far we've seen it being used with the axe to break the guard of enemies. We've seen it being used as a grappling hook as well as the umbrella shield. Now let's talk a little bit about combat. The sword play looks very interesting. We don't really have like a scene where he plays with a shield. We've seen the whole thing with you using the axe. There's the axe, there's the sword, there's the umbrella shield that you can use for more powerful attacks, I'm assuming. But the cool thing about swordplay is that it looks like you're going to be blocking with the sword as well as doing counters and parries. There definitely seems to be some kind of parry mechanic, because we see him parry attacks against a certain boss, and at the same time, like this Japanese character pops up on top of the character itself. And I don't know what that Japanese character means. If you are Japanese or if you know Japanese, please let me know in the comment section what the hell that means so that I will know as well. But I was thinking that maybe he parried him and then he casted some kind of special ability that was activated because he was able to parry. Maybe that was a thing, but I'm not 100% sure. Later in the trailer, you're going to see some kind of AoE thing with fire that your character does. Now, that is something that I'm curious about, because would that be magic or would that be a gadget? Because the theme of the game just definitely almost screams out at me that it is a gadget. Because like, it seems the game is a little bit grounded, other than some of the more weirdly mutated monsters. But you don't see a lot of hints of magic, so to speak. At least I didn't notice it in the trailer. Sure, you see some really mystical creatures like the giant snake and all that, but you don't really see that much magic. Not to mention that with the trick weapon thing, I kind of think that a gadget would be more interesting if you were able to just like do that with, like gunpowder or something like that. And you'll be able to craft something that you can use to do that fire AoE thing. That looks interesting. Another thing, a couple of more things of note that I thought were pretty cool was the boss's brutal grapple. Not sure if you guys saw that brutal grapple attack in the trailer. That was friggin' insane. Boss just grabs you, dude, just like smashes you on the floor and then throws you away. Again, just adding to what I was talking about with the agile combat. There's a lot more of your character getting tossed around and your character even propelling himself towards enemies, which is... we've seen some agile combat, but usually it's more like, okay, dodge, counter, attack, dodge, depending on the which Soulsborne game you're talking about. But in this one, like I kind of feel like it's going to be much more agile, like even faster than Bloodborne, so to speak, which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Much more action type combat. So that brutal grapple was interesting. There's also another mechanic, which is when the boss spits poison onto a sword, you actually see him spitting poison onto the sword, and I'm assuming that makes that sword poison. But the cool thing about that is not just the fact that the sword is poisoned, and I'm assuming the character itself died from poison. The interesting thing is that when you die, which they actually show your character dying in this trailer, you see that there's like this red thing on top of the character, like these red particles start forming around him. I believe that again another Japanese character shows up on top of your character, and it seems like your character is resurrected on the spot. I'm not sure if I'm 100% correct on that, but it definitely seemed like that was the case. And immediately after he gets resurrected, like the boss is still walking away and your character just goes up behind him and does this brutal, visceral backstab. Now, naturally, this is done heavily edited, so we don't know if that was just like a sequence of events, like boss kills you, you resurrect it on the spot, you go back and you kill the boss. But something that I thought that instantly came to mind is the fact that, you know, the title says Shadows Die Twice. Does that mean that you essentially have two lives, and how would that mechanic possibly work? Because again, your character was resurrected on the spot. He was not taken back to a spawn point or anything like that. It almost seems like boss kills you, you instantly resurrect, and you instantly jump on top of the boss again. So do you get two lives? Is that a potential mechanic that we can see? And how does that work? Is it like maybe, you know, like you had the regain system in Bloodborne, right? Enemy hits you, if you hit them right back instantly, you're able to regain your health. So imagine if like an enemy kills you, but you almost get this second win. So you resurrect on the spot, you rush to the enemy. And if you're able to kill the enemy, then you come back to life. Or if you're not able to kill the enemy, then you die, thus giving you the Shadows Die Twice thing. That would be a really cool mechanic, which, you know, would make the game a little bit more forgiving. But the good part of making a game a little bit more forgiving is that it encourages players to do more experimentation. Because, you know, a lot of times in games like this, games where your character will die and you will lose progress, a lot of players will tend to play a little bit more conservatively. Having a mechanic like this is something that goes in line with the whole thing of you being able to grappling hook yourself and launch yourself towards bosses and get them thrown around. Basically, it fits in line with the more agile, more action type combat that they're going for. At least it seems that they're going for that. And having this mechanic be a little bit more forgiving allows players to experiment more. Like, no, I'm going to go all out and I'm going to try this thing and that thing and the other thing, because there's always a chance to rally behind. And that is something that I think would be really cool. Again, it would have to be balanced out so that it wouldn't make the game too easy, but it would be cool because it would enable players to try out crazy combinations, and it would make the game overall more fun, in my opinion. Anyway, then like I mentioned, there's a brutal visceral backstab attack on the boss. Could that potentially be something that you can do if enemies don't see you, again, because of a little bit more focus on stealth and stuff like that, like we have seen backstabs in previous Soulsborne games? And I'm sorry if I'm comparing it too much to Soulsborne, but we know that Miyazaki tends to draw a lot from the stuff that he knows and kind of derives a lot of that stuff into his new games. But I mean, we've had backstabs in previous games by, you know, sneaking up on monsters, stabbing them in the back, stuff like that. But I wonder if in here it could be a little bit more brutal, because, you know, there's the whole stealth element to it. I think it'd be cool. I think it'd be a cool mechanic. But then again, I also don't want things to like just, you know, go down this path where it's just, oh, if you just stealth your way up through everything, you can just kill everything and everyone in one hit, not really have to fight anything. So, you know, I still want it to have that visceral combat that we tend to have. Then we saw a couple of centipede creatures. These were a little bit out of context, so I don't know exactly what the deal is with that. Probably just showing you a couple of bosses. We saw the horseback enemy, where you actually see him getting, where you actually use the grappling hook to propel yourself towards the boss. And then we also saw another thing, which was that boss had a grappling hook of his own. Well, it was not a grappling hook. It was some kind of a weapon with a rope that he would throw at you. And we saw him actually parry that with the sword. So again, that parry mechanic, that counter/parry mechanics that I was talking about for the sword, apparently enabled you to also block ranged attacks. So it seems like your character is going to be a pretty skilled swordsman. And then finally, at the very end of the trailer, we see a giant snake on a rope bridge. So again, just a very quick recap of what the story is supposed to be. You're going to be a protagonist in the role of a hard-hearted warrior whose mission is to rescue his master, a young lord, and exact revenge on your arch nemesis. Now, a couple of the lines that are saying in this trailer. Some time has passed since I found you. Your master still lives. He'll soon make use of his bloodline. Not exactly sure what that means, because like your bloodline, naturally, your descendants, all of that stuff. But in here, it almost seems like he'll soon make use of his bloodline as in like a final draw of power, like he's able to draw power from his bloodline somehow. So I don't know what the deal is with that. But to me, it kind of really seemed like it would be some kind of special power that he would be able to get. Could be completely wrong. Don't know. Another thing that he says is the limb you lost will give way to something more useful. You'll learn to appreciate its worth. Naturally talking about the trick weapon that you have as that prosthetic arm, which, as we've seen in this trailer, can be used as an axe to break guard, grappling hook to move around or attack enemies, and the umbrella shield. And finally, the other thing that he says is your death won't come easily when you die at that particular boss that I was talking about, and then you kind of just like resurrect on the spot and attack the boss again. So all in all, I think it's safe to say that I'm pretty excited. It's actually interesting because you've seen a lot of people actually said this in my live stream, which I thought was pretty cool. That you have Neo, which was clearly inspired by Souls, and now it almost seems like now it's Souls that's inspired by Neo. I don't think that's the case, but some people are drawing that conclusion. But I am very curious to see what Miyazaki does in a feudal Japan setting. And it looks like we're going to be having two pretty cool games that are going to be taking place in feudal Japan, because not only we're going to have Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, but we're also going to have Ghost of Tsushima, which is something that I will be talking about more when we actually get news during what I'm assuming will be during the Sony press conference. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, remember, if you like my videos, consider subscribing, consider hitting the notification bell icon so that you're actually notified of any future video that I do. At this point, you'll most likely have 2 more suggestions of videos in the end slate, so you can click any of those if you're interested in watching. Otherwise, thank you once again very much for watching. I really appreciate everyone's support, and I will see you in the next one.